writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm your host, Stephanie McGrath, and the Publisher Operations Specialist here at Kobo Writing Life.
And I'm your co-host, Joni DiPacido, Author Engagement Specialist at Kobo Writing Life.
This episode, we talked to Holly Mortimer. She started writing 5 years ago and self-publishes contemporary romances, but not only is she an author, she also coaches entrepreneurs on how to grow their business.
Yeah, and as she told us, for the last 2 years, she specialized in email marketing, so she gave us some really great tips on what authors can do to use email marketing to reach their audiences and strategies that they can implement.
And she also runs a successful space for romance writers looking to grow their writing business called the Social Vert Society, which she talks about in the episode, so we cover a lot of information, so please keep listening. Thank you, Holly, for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Holly Mortimer. I started out in this industry writing contemporary, and I'm kind of evolving. I'm sure we'll talk a bit about where my writing journey is headed, but I write contemporary romance. My background is in the music business and the travel business. So I don't write rock stars, but I do write stories that heavily are influenced by travel. So, particularly small towns, coastal towns. I have an Irish series, all that kind of stuff. So I love to travel. And so I kind of created my own subgenre called contemporary travel romance.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so that's me in my writing journey. I am a mom of 2 teen girls. I live in the city of Stratford. And I do write part-time because I have full-time. I spend most of my hours of the day working with writers, coaching them and teaching them all about digital marketing strategies, and particularly in the email marketing field.
So we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning that Stratford is full of writers.
Yeah, we're full of writers. There was just a writers festival last weekend, which I wasn't involved in. I wasn't here, but they have one of those every year. They have a real thriving creative community naturally with the Shakespearean Festival that exists here. They're up to 4 theaters now, but then it just attracts kind of artists, whatever medium they're in, they seem to really gravitate here. But particularly in my field and romance field, there are a real great group of romance writers that run the gamut from indie to traditionally published to hybrid to those that write for screenplays. So we're all over the place, but we get together once a month and have lunch, and whoever can come comes, and whoever can't, usually virtually, kind of chimes in, and we just we kind of hang out and have fun.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah, it is super cool.
Can you tell us a bit about how you started writing?
Sure. I started writing in high school in a funny, weird class called Ancient Egyptian History, where I had to write a kind of documentary on Cleopatra. And I chose to write it in a soap opera form because her life was so very...
Oh, that's fun.
So very soap opera-ish. And I had a really great history teacher who said, you should think about a career in writing for soap operas, because it was just so campy and over the top and fun. I did well, and then I went to school for music business, but I had to have an upgraded English course. So I again found an English professor, and we worked on some pieces that I wrote, and she submitted them for some awards through the government, and I won. And so then ever since then, I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe this is something I could do. So I traveled in the music industry. I worked for a prominent record label, and I was alone a lot. So I just started kind of writing. And then I moved from the record industry into the travel industry. And so I was still traveling, still writing. It was something you could do when you were alone and you didn't look too weird, I was alone a lot. So I would, grab pen and paper, and as I was eating, I would write, and so it eventually evolved into many tiny short stories and novellas, which, as we all know, became very easy to self-publish. And so I started out self-publishing, and I have never kind of left from there.
What did you do in the traveling industry?
I worked for a tour operator. So I was a national sales manager for a company that built tours of Europe, UK, and Ireland. And so I sold travel to what's called consortiums that like big corporations that own small travel agencies. And so I would kind of follow them as far as the convention circuit went. So I would travel to conventions and speak about our product and how to sell our product. But then I would also travel on our product and take people with me to kind of teach them how to sell the product.
Did that inform a lot of your writing now? Because you write a lot about Ireland.
And
right.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Ireland. It's an inexpensive place in the travel industry to take people and to operate. So yes, and as most people do when they go to Ireland or dream about going to Ireland, there is this magical kind of mystical feel to being there, and it's very romantic. And I mean, I started out in the romance reading kind of world with Nora Roberts, who wrote a ton of Irish, and Maeve Binchy and all these people that wrote a lot of Irish romance. And it very much, my travels there and my reading informed how I really wanted to communicate to potential readers everything that Ireland had to offer as far as hopes and dreams and love goes.
I was just there. When was I there? May, and I'm like, I can agree. Very romantic.
Oh yeah, May's a great time to go too. I usually try to go off season, but yeah, you can just imagine yourself staying there and having a tiny cottage and meeting a little at a pub, and yeah. So I can't be the only one that thinks that way, right?
So when did you start self-publishing?
5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You feel like the industry has changed from when you first started out?
It has. I think I didn't start at the onset of indie publishing. I started somewhere kind of a few years after it had become a little more mainstream, a little more crowded, I guess you could call it. But I think it's evolved in how strategic writing, not strategic writing, but the marketing of the writing has to be, how focused we have to be. It's no longer where you can just throw a book up on Amazon and tell some people about it and walk away with a few Facebook posts and you're earning enough revenue to support yourself. It's become a real journey through a business perspective, where a lot of writers typically, I've noticed, and myself as well, you really need a business plan. You really need a strategy, because the market is crowded. And I think, though, on the opposite side of it, it's just become so accessible and so much easier to kind of pursue that passion and test those dreams and test directions that you want to go. Because it's no longer knocking down agents' doors and knocking down traditional publishing houses in order to achieve success, for sure.
And you said that you coach other authors about how to market. Is that correct?
Yeah, so naturally kind of just started that way. When I was done, after I had my second child, I thought, I can't travel anymore. Like, this is crazy. I was missing so much of their lives that I decided to do a complete 180 and buy a children's clothing store, which was a bad idea. I bought it 3 weeks after my youngest daughter was born, and I was hormonal and crazy. So I ran it, and then I quickly sold it. But what I learned was how to buy and sell businesses, how to run businesses, and I got a job with the government, a contract teaching small businesses how to do the same thing, or how to build and grow. And so naturally, my coaching abilities evolved based on, all these questions from all these different industries I was getting. But because I was a writer and I was talking a lot to other writers, I would get the same questions over and over and over again. Like, how do I market on Facebook? How do I use Instagram? How do I buy ad space? Like, all of that kind of stuff. And I teach other people who are looking to get into their own business how to recognize the skills that they can bring to the table. And so I finally said, okay, wait, a lot of people are asking me the same questions. Maybe I can create a course. So I started out creating a course that was called the Romance Writers Marketing Academy. But what I quickly noticed was that there were a lot of questions, and answering them all took a lot of time, and there must have been a better way to do it. So I built what's now called the Social Vert Society. My business is called the Social Vert. And so the society is a membership base for romance writers, where they can come in and just ask any question at any time of day. And either I'll answer it or the member base will answer it, because typically there's a ton of people, but not typically, there are a ton of writers in there who are either mid-list, who have hit, that are well at the top of their game, or starting out, or somewhere in the middle. And everybody's experiencing a lot of the same things. So it's a central place where we can go to give answers, but also where I can strategically teach lessons that are applicable to the masses, as opposed to kind of answering them one-off here and there.
So the thing I wanted to touch upon specifically was email marketing. So I'm just wondering, like, this is like the most general question, but like, how do authors actually build up marketing base from their email newsletter list?
Yeah, so just to start out, email converts so much better. Like if you're working on an organic, and that means like an unpaid social media strategy, it's really hard these days to get anybody's notice. But if you're email marketing and you're building even a list of 25, 300, 1,000 people, you can get, on average, 22 to 25% of them to pay attention to what you're saying. So in my mind, it makes sense to be at least a key part of your strategy. Some people use it as the whole part of their strategy, especially if they're writing erotica or things that are really hard to get onto social media. So in my funnel, my big marketing term funnel, I'm always moving people from social media into my list. If it's a takeover, it's a giveaway, it's always list first, book second kind of thing. And then I'm selling to them through those sequences that I build on the list. So, I mean, most authors have the front and back matter in their books that are moving the readers through to their list. And that works, but it's becoming more and more difficult, to get people through to the end of your book. So putting it in the front is always a great idea. Making sure the links are live, making sure there's something to welcome the readers at the other end when they get there that incentivizes them to kind of dig deeper into who you are. And I've seen some really fun and interesting new ways to get people to click on those links inside of books now with the digital nature of most people's reading habits. It's really become something less challenging, to get people to link through to your list. I use Pinterest, which is a very non-used strategy, but to move people that are searching on Pinterest for weddings and romance and quotes and all that, I move them through to my website where there's a pop-up that grabs their email, which delivers them the sequence. So it's just always gathering, always taking the chance to try to gather that email address in a very clear and legal, above board manner.
So can you explain what a sequence is in case anyone's like, I don't know what that is?
Sequence is just one or more emails. It can even be one. MailChimp defines a sequence as one email. that I don't see how. But anyway, typically for me, my sequences last 2 or 3 emails, for sometimes if there's a special circumstance. But yeah, a sequence will be delivered hopefully automatically by most email service providers. They will offer that up that will give your readers a little more, than here's the book and the next book, whether it's first in series free or what have you, whatever you're kind of using as a lead magnet to get them into your, to get them familiar with who you are. A sequence will be more than one email that kind of doesn't always just sell. It often will lead them to your favorite social channel. It will lead them to your backlist. It will lead them to learn more about you, because no matter what industry you're looking at, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And so readers are no different. If they trust you, they will buy your whole backlist. And trust is built in that first book. So hopefully in that sequence, you've got something that's kind of delivering that trust piece.
Do you find that authors are making similar mistakes when trying email marketing?
Yeah, sure. A lot of authors make 3 very three very similar mistakes. One, they feel that it's not worth it. Like they don't have a list. They're not list building, and they're not list building for some very clear reasons. One, they feel their lives are not interesting. There's nothing for them to really ever talk about other than here's a link to my book, which is so not true. My answer is always, you wrote a book. Like, that's pretty interesting, right? So second one is they're terrified of the unsubscribe. So the unsubscribe always has this mindset piece that goes with it. And my answer to that is always, when somebody unsubscribes, your list decreases by 1. And that is all that happens.
Yeah.
Nobody finds you and yells at you or screams at you. Nothing horrible happens. You just don't have a person on your list who never was your ideal reader to begin with. And the third thing is they often resist email marketing because they're afraid of being spammy. Nobody wants to get email on their list, of which I always say, do you not have an inbox? Do you not get emails from people, whether they're authors or brands that you love? And do you unsubscribe? And yeah, we all unsubscribe, but we also all open emails. And it's understanding why that will help you kind of build a better email.
And what are some best practices for authors writing those emails?
My first piece of advice is always split test your subject line. So instead of writing one subject line, understanding that the majority of email service providers, and if they don't, there's a very simple manual way to do it, will offer the automated ability to send out more than one subject line to a percentage of your list. And so when it declares a winner, then they send out, the majority of your list gets the best subject line. And its subject lines basically are your first point of entry in order to get your emails into an inbox instead of a spam folder or a promotional tab. So the more you're sending emails where the subject line is attractive, where it speaks to the reader and where they click it, and hopefully click something inside of the email, then the more your email service provider's algorithm determines that, oh, this person really likes to hear from this person, we're going to start sending that email to their inbox instead of their spam folder or their promotions tab. So subject line is really important. Personalization is really important. So you can either insert a personalization, and that's just, hey, say it's coming to me, hey, Holly, whatever. So the person's name is in it. Inside the body of the email is often really effective too. And then the other tip that I always like to offer up to people is, some email service providers will do it automatically, but others you can just do it manually, is a resend on really important emails. So if your open rate is low and you have a pre-order or something that you really want to get out there, a cover reveal, a promotion, or a bundle or something like that, auto resend it. So the internet service provider will send it out again, and you can change the subject line so it looks like an entirely different email, and you can change the body of the email so it looks different. So on the off chance somebody opens both, they're like, oh, I got this. They don't think I got this twice. They just got a different email. Yeah. And it really does two things. It increases your open rate, which tells the email service provider that more people want to read your emails, so you get a better rating inside there. And the second thing is it just sells more books. Like, more people are opening it. So those are my 3 top tips.
Do you have any specific recommendations for mail program? Like, I know you mentioned MailChimp.
At the risk of enraging MailChimp, I don't like MailChimp. I've enraged them many times, so I've been fortunate to have some one-on-one meetings with them. They made a major change in their service back in May or maybe April, and they are very transparently moving towards being a marketing platform as opposed to an email service provider. Okay. They're bringing out websites in the next month or two. They've got
podcasts.
Yeah, they've got all sorts of things. Yeah, they've got podcasts. Yeah, so and when I was at a conference and talking to them, their display area didn't say the word email at all. And the reps that I've talked to we're very clearly moving away from being known as an email service provider. And as a result, they've done a few things that have angered most people that were there for the email services. And I mean, that would be raising the prices, treating all people who have signed up for your list as active, even though they've unsubscribed, and also they're an American company and the rules are different in the States. And so they're actively telling people to engage their unsubscribes, which here in Canada and in the EU is against the law. So it's really hard to use it, especially from a Canadian perspective, as an effective tool. So I really like MailerLite. They're really set up for authors. They have templates that are for specifically for authors, which is great. I've used ConvertKit. They're a little more expensive, but very high on the automated side. Aweber, there's a lot of really great providers out there. Most of them will give you some time to test them out. That's a little challenging in that moving your list around and around and around is a bit of a hard thing. But yeah, I would highly recommend MailerLite. I work mainly with MailerLite with most of my clients, and I teach to it just because it seems that there's a big shift from MailChimp to MailerLite, and the cost is pretty affordable.
Do they offer specific stats on this email was opened this many times, this email went to this geo and was opened at this time, stuff like that?
Yeah, okay. They can drill down really deep into the stats, whether you want it at a high level by month or by campaign or by automation. They have a lot of integrations now, which means they will, if you have a WordPress website, they have pop-ups that lead people right into your MailerLite welcome sequence. They have a lot of forms. Yeah, they've done a lot of work. And specifically in the last 6 weeks, they opened up a new template piece. So you can pull in surveys. You can pull in, if you're having an event on Facebook and you are dropping a cover or something like that, it can do the registration for you. You can do, there's all sorts of things that you can do in there that are super cool. Now they have blocks where you can decide what segment of your list you want. So you have Apple users, Apple readers and Amazon readers, and you don't want to do your email twice, but you do want to send a very different link to each database. Of course, why did I just forget Kobo? We've also want to put the Kobo readers in there. That was very rude of me. And so I'm always collecting who clicks what link, and MailerLite will save that. So I have a Kobo list, I have an Apple list, I have an Amazon list inside my emails, and they all get they'll get the same email, but with a different link based on their clicking habits. But now MailerLite has this feature where you can take a block, just one single block, and send it to the 3 different segments or however many you want. So you don't have to rewrite the whole email and do it over and over again, whether you're copying it or not still. But you can just say, okay, send this email with this block to the Kobo people, with this block to the Apple people, and with this block to the Amazon people. And then your open rate, more so your click-through rate, becomes higher, right? Because you're getting the right people, but you're doing less work in order to do that.
Very cool.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
How important do you think that cadence is? What's an ideal? Like, nobody wants to be spammed, right? But
no. In October, I've sent 16 emails.
Wow.
And I have a 0.02% unsubscribe rate. It's all about that trust piece, right? So I very rarely send an email out that just says, here's a cover, here's a book. Or sorry, here's a cover, here's a link. It's always prefaced with a conversation. And sometimes it's stylized and sometimes it's a straight up text email. But I just had a release so that it makes sense that I had 16. But I would say if you're emailing your readers less than 2 emails a month, you are not, it's kind of like social media. If you're not consistently showing up, you're not consistently able to access, because email has its own algorithm too, then you're not landing in as many inboxes, you're not being as effective. If you send 2 or more emails a month, your open rate can double over time. So if you're getting a 20% open rate, you can enjoy a 40% open rate over time, and that time doesn't take long. I'd say like 2-3 months. It's not hard to do. And we go back to I don't have anything interesting to say other than, here's my book, buy it. Particularly for new authors that have 1 book or something like that. But what you're trying to do is build a loyal fan base. And if you think about Instagram influencers or celebrities that you enjoy following, it's the same kind of strategy. You want a loyal fan base so that when you do have a next book, they're ready, they're primed and ready to buy. So whether you have something coming out or not, first of all, you should always probably have a pre-order ready to go, and then you can always slip that in. But they know enough about you, whether you have a pen name, whether you run under a pen name or not, whether you want to show your face or not, whether you want to talk about your life or not, you can still build that loyalty through email, because it's like having a conversation with people. I just sent out an email this morning talking about my frustrations with trying to get Hamilton tickets this weekend, and
I got
so I was in the pre-sale, then I had to drive my daughter to a hockey game, and a came up while I was in the car. So then I got back in line on another pre-sale, and then I got back in line this morning, and by the time I got in, there was nothing available. But that was my email, right? And so I sent an email out 2 weeks ago, which was like my most successful email, and it was maybe 4 lines, and it was just, can I ask you a question, was the subject line. And then inside the email was, do you like alpha males, yes or no? And there was like this adamant, that was it, hit reply and let me know. And so I had a bunch of author friends like, what are you up to? What are you trying to do? Planning. And I'm like, nothing. I just want to keep my engagement up, right? But then you have these great conversations with your readers. They're like, I don't like alpha males. And I'm like, okay, why not? And so you're gathering information on what you're going to write. If this is your reader and they hate alpha males and you love to write alphas, you're in trouble, right? Okay, well, maybe there's a deeper problem, or one time, my last book has a guy with a man bun in it, and I'm like, who loves a good man bun? And I got the most hate mail I've ever gotten.
Wow.
It was exciting because I'm like, oh, okay, so nobody likes man buns. Now what am I going to do? He had to cut his hair like through the middle, and they were all very, very much fine with that. But that all came from an email, and so they don't have to be long. Those ones are 4 lines long, and when people reply to you, it sends a clear signal to the algorithm that they want to talk to you, and then the majority of your emails will continue to land in their inbox instead of the awful spam folder or the promotions tab or something like that.
Is there like certain stats that someone should be looking at constantly when sending in emails, like the open rate or like the unsubscribe? Are there certain things that you think they should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, there are industry averages. So in our industry, you want to be somewhere close to the average. Some are below, some are above, but that's good. Like they range from 22 to 25% as an open rate in our industry. The click rate is somewhere between 3 and 4%. So if you're falling consistently below those, you need to analyze what's happening. And list size to me doesn't matter. I've got clients that have lists that are tens of thousands, and those that have lists that are less than 500. But it's just as long as you're growing that list, it will grow. I'd rather have a small list with a focused amount of readers on it that my click-through rate. I have one client whose click-through rate is 90%.
Wow.
She has a very tightly segmented list, right? So different subgenres that she writes in, not everybody gets the same email ever, so small segments can get nice, delicious open rates. But yeah, pay attention to those open rates and pay attention to those click-through rates. And if you're sagging below, it's time to analyze why. Maybe you're only sending one once every few months. Or maybe you are just sending the same thing over and over again, which a lot of writers are guilty of in social media and in their email marketing. Just, here's my book, buy it. Here's my book, buy it. I don't do a lot of newsletter swaps. I don't love them. I don't want to be lost in the message, but those are always a way to kind of, as you're starting, to at least kind of gain some semblance of what's clicked on. But there's always ways to increase your open rate, and it doesn't take as much with email marketing as it does with social media. Plus, you control the message, right? So if you want to put half-naked men in there, go for it. You can put as many in there as you want. I manage an email marketing project for an erotic writer, and whenever I check in with MailerLite, we had some things wrong, and I would like die because I'd be like, hey, can you look at this email for me? And then we'd go in and like, oh my. But it's the only way we could get her message out, and her sales started to grow because Facebook was obviously that's a no-no, and yeah, so those are stats.
Any authors that do this particularly well? Like, is it worth signing up to a particular author's mailing list to see who's doing it right and who's doing it well and what you can learn from?
Yeah, for sure. My first, one of the first pieces of advice I always give people when they're starting or when they're in the middle, like I have a bunch of friends who are prolific writers doing very, very well and ignoring their email list, even though they have like 20,000 on it. They're like, nobody wants to read that. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't you go to your inbox and see what you like to read? Any brand, authors, brands, whatever. And typically I save subject lines and put them in a place, but see what you would open, because typically if you're writing it, you're probably going to read it. So you're probably the same as your reader. Would you open this author's email? Do you consistently open this author's email? Okay, why? Do you consistently open this brand's email? Like I always give Old Navy as the example. I probably get one of those a day, sometimes two, depending on what's happening. But I never unsubscribe because I'm always happy with what I get. When I open it, I know I'm going to get an advance notice of what's coming. And so some readers like that. And it's always worth it to survey your readers, but to dive into your inbox and see what things are hitting your spam folder too. Like, why is this in my spam folder? What about it do I hate, so I never open it? Why is this in my promotions tab? And it's just mentally triggering yourself to kind of pay attention to that. There are a lot of authors' emails who I love, and a lot of really great popular authors whose emails I'm like, oh. Yeah, so You don't have to be selling, you don't have to be a bestseller in order to have a great email. But if you are a bestseller and have a great email, that will only increase your revenue.
I was interested in, you mentioned Pinterest before, and I feel like that's the most hard platform to get a handle of. What are like some of the tips that you use?
Figure out our Kobo one too.
Yeah. So you first start thinking of Pinterest as a search engine for women as opposed to a social media platform. It helps kind of inform where you're going to go when you get there. I always think of it as, okay, so I use Pinterest instead of Google when I'm trying to figure out keywords and metadata and all that kind of stuff. So if I go to Pinterest, because I know my readers are between the ages of 30 and 55, and they are probably married, and they probably have a Pinterest board with children, like for kids' ideas or things like that. So I'll hop into Pinterest and just start checking out words like love, romance. And so for me, this is where I'm headed. And I always see Pinterest comes up with these little kind of, I don't know, they're like icons across so it'll be, Google, if you type something and it drops down to the next most searched on terms. Pinterest, those are the most searched on next words that kind of crawl across from left to right. And so if I put in love and the next searched in term is wedding or quotes, usually it's always quotes. And then I'm like, okay, so I'm going to build some stylized quotes from my books, and I'm going to pin them, and I'm going to pin them in different boards. And instead of labeling all of my boards, like I have a board for each book, I've got wedding inspiration, romance inspiration, quotes, all of these things. And then slowly over time, and it really doesn't take long in Pinterest, you start to notice in the analytics what pins of yours are being pinned. Pinterest also does, it's really cool. It tells you like in the overall kind of category. So let's say romance, it will tell you the most popular pins. And then you're like, okay, so how do I make a pin that moves them to my website? Or I find moving them to my website the most valuable. Some people will move them to their sales page, regardless of the platform. I'm always moving to a website because Pinterest is an algorithm. It does track, it does have something called the click gap where it tracks where people are moving to, and it prefers a website where you have ownership over that. Anyhow, so you can see clearly the analytics on a large scale. So based on these search terms, these pins are really popular. Based on your search terms, these are your pins that are really popular, and then you just start making more of them.
I like that. When I go on Pinterest myself, I don't realize that the tags are like the most popular things that are going up, and now you say it, I'm like, oh, this all makes sense.
Yeah. There's just a few simple kind of mindset shifts, and then you use it as a search engine research tool, or a metadata research tool, usually. And so it's all about the keywords on Pinterest. And your descriptions are keywords, not stuffed, but strategically put in there. So I don't put my blurb in. I'll put other things in, like, this, single dad pub owner, whatever. And so you're thinking, or loves or hates, or this heroine loves this quote, whatever, right? So you just start understanding the relationship between the search terms, and you can really succeed. Now my Pinterest account right now is automated, so I'm not in it. When I'm releasing, I'm back in it, but I've had some success with like 6 figures worth of pins, so there's hundreds of thousands of people pinning stuff every day inside my stuff. Now, contemporary works really well because that's kind of the cross-section of the user that's in there. So the female and the millennial age bracket. Historical, I have a bunch of clients that really find great success on historical, so moving people through to either their website or to a sales page in there. Not everything works in there, but it is something that is really often underutilized.
So you may not have an answer for this, but what is the best thing that you have done for your writing business?
Oh, treat it like a business as opposed to a hobby. Yeah, that's kind of it. So
that's perfect.
Yeah, I have a business plan. I have a marketing plan. I have a revenue goal, and I break down how I'm going to get there. I break down my year, and not just because I don't publish as much as the majority of full-time writers or even new writers publish. So it has to be very strategic. I also market to parallel interests, which is if I'm doing paid traffic or paid marketing or even talking about my books, it's often to my ideal reader. and what they're interested in. So I know my ideal reader loves children. So it's like using Pinterest in a different way. So you'll target, or Facebook, if you want to target people. I don't just target people who read on Kobo. I like women who read on Kobo who are parents, of daughters. So they have a lot of girl kids inside, or people, who's out there reading these books, and who's out there that isn't reading these books that would enjoy it, and how can I find them, as opposed to how can I find the very traditional ways of finding readers, kind of go untraditional. And so I will market to tourism agencies, or there are hard copies of my books in B&Bs in Ireland, or places like that. So you just try to think, okay, well, where are these people? Where did they find their books? And do they like digital? Do they like paperback? And if they like digital, how do they read? It's understanding all of these things, which is all part of treating your writing like a business instead of a hobby.
How do you find the split between digital and print copies?
For me, it used to be hard because I prefer selling on digital. I thought I didn't have a lot of paperback readers. And then when I started surveying, I found I did have a decent amount of them. But it's all training your readers on how to read. So something fun to do would be like a screen record of how can you read my book on your phone? How can you read my book on the subway? How can you read my book at a hockey arena? So I have one client who writes hockey, and I'm like, how can we get your book into parent moms who are sitting there waiting, and they don't realize that? I'm always surprised at how many friends I have that are in their 30s or 40s that don't realize they might have an iPhone, but that they can put a Kobo app on their phone or a Kindle app on their iPhone. I mean, I know it's not always vice versa, but, I don't ever read on my phone. Well, here, let me show you how easy it is, how much fun it can be when you're waiting for your child in the pickup line, or something like that. So it's teaching your readers where you want them to be in order to purchase it, and informing them. I'll often email my readers and say, do you know how an author makes money? This is how an author makes money. And they're like, oh, I never knew that. Or I thought you had an agent. I thought you went through, why can't I buy your books at Indigo or something like that? Well, here's why. And when you explain to them, they're like, oh, okay, well, how can I buy your books? Well, I would really love it if you bought them digitally, and you teach them. And it's all about education and moving them from, I still print paperbacks, so you can still order them, but it's not my favorite way to sell books. It's only from a business perspective. But if I like to read books digitally, I'm going to assume that my readers like to read books digitally as well.
And what are you working on right now? Or what's coming up next?
So right now, I am moving from contemporary romance into women's fiction. So I kind of see, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but I kind of see a melding of those two genres, where I was inspired by a New York Times article I read last month on the new 40 to 50-year-old woman and what she's looking for out of life, and how so much of marketing was geared to what it used to be, and what it is now, like that. And this article was following these female CEOs in their mid-40s who were taking skiing lessons and traveling around the world and snowboarding and windsurfing and taking up rock climbing and all these crazy things. But basically the undertone was that they're not dead. They're out there looking for, a lot of them are single, or they never used to be. And so I am writing a series of books between 5 and 7 of chronicling a woman who's over 40, which is like scary because there's that young heroine is so appealing and easy to sell. But I really think that there is a market for contemporary romance in the women's fiction arena, so that's what I'm working on. I've got 5 best friends, all single for different reasons, widowed, never married, divorced, all that kind of stuff, who are on adventures. So again, they're traveling, or they're on breaks from work, or they're single parents or what have you, and it's their love lives that we'll dive into.
noticed in the past couple of years that a lot of big romance authors have transitioned into women's fiction from like the standard contemporary. So I'm interested to see where this goes.
A topic of conversation with multiple friends that I have and clients where they're like, okay, how do we do a women's fiction cover? So how do we keep the same content but change the marketing around it, and how do you find them? So I think, it'll be interesting. We'll see how it goes.
Definitely. Cool. And what have you been loving lately? Listening to, reading, watching?
Oh, well, watching for me, I just got into Schitt's Creek. I know, my daughter cracks up at my 11-year-old every time I say it. She's like, so can I say that word? I'm like, only if you spell it out, SCH. Because it's 21 minutes on Netflix, and I'm busy, and so I can do that. I've been rereading Julie Garwood. I got into that I've been listening to the Fated Mates podcast. Oh my God,
me too. I love that podcast. What's it called? Fated Mates.
What's happened is now I'm just desperate to read so many things all at once because I'm just coming into it late, right? And I'd never read The Immortals After Dark and the.
Oh, you hadn't?
No, and specials where they're talking about all these other recommending. I'm like, God, I don't have time for this. But so I have been actively reading all of those books. Right.
Working at Kobo is like, people just keep adding to your reading.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine.
Have you read this?
I've been trying to get people at work to listen to this podcast since it started, and I think I've got maybe one person. So slowly but surely, I'm going to convert. You don't read romance as much.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's what I'm up to.
Sounds great. And then your next release is coming out, or did it come out?
The last release just came out last month. And then this new series will start releasing in March. Yep, just writing it. And I have a short story. I did a project in the summer, an Instagram project where I called it This or That, where I let my readers, I polled them for 30 days on who's the hero going to be, what's his name, what's he look like. Like I gave them every question that I would go through. And they crafted the entire book. And then, so right now I'm just writing it, which I find is really hard and also easy at the same time. Like, nope, these are your parameters. The heroine has red hair. She's a librarian. She's this. The hero is a billionaire, which I'm like, I've never written a billionaire romance. And I kept trying to like persuade the vote, like, maybe you should do musician. Maybe you guys should like a musician. They're like, no. So I let them choose the book. And so right now I'm writing that, which is a novella. And then at the same time, I'm writing the first in the series. So I've got a couple things coming out in the next first quarter of the year.
Reader source.
That's very cool.
I like that idea a lot.
It worked out really well. It's slow to take off, but then by the end, they were very adamant about what they liked and what they didn't like, which is there's a lot of great things that came from it, but mainly data. Like, oh, okay, so here's my reader cross-section, and here's what they really like. So I'm going to need to write more billionaires, but I don't really want to, but how can I make that work, right?
Yeah.
So,
you never know. Maybe you'll end up loving it when you start writing.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and I've had a few readers check in, like, I haven't seen it yet. I'm like, good Lord, I just started it, like, last week.
It's coming.
Yeah. So, and then, just learning a lot about, I have a lot of one-on-one clients who are authors, and so just kind of helping them. So I've got a lot of that going on, too.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
This was
Thanks.
great.
It was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're looking for Holly Mortimer's books, we will include a link in the show notes to this episode. If you're looking for extra tips on how to grow your sales, visit KoboWritingLife.com.
This episode was produced by Stephanie McGrath and Joni DePlacido. This episode was edited by Kelly Robotham. Music was provided by Tearjerker, and special thanks to Holly for being a guest on our episode.
Woo!
If you're ready to start your self-publishing journey today, sign up for free at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.